We're in a very interesting time right now where we have YouTube documentaries and we have Netflix documentaries about psychedelics, and yet we have very little information to actually guide people on it. So you can watch something like, what is it called, Of Waves and War, or you can listen to a podcast with Rick Doblin and Joe Rogan, and then you're still left wondering, like, is this for me? And if so, where do I even start? Hey folks, David here with the Plant Medicine for PTSD podcast. Welcome back to the show. And if you're looking at my beautiful face right now on YouTube and you haven't hit the subscribe button, what are you even doing with your life? If you're listening on Apple or Spotify and you've not left a review, what does that say about you as a person? I'm just kidding. Obviously, I'm joking, but that actually does go a lot further than you might think to help somebody else find this stuff. So don't do that for me. I don't care about these things, but do it for one of your brothers or sisters out there who is suffering in silence and doesn't have the good fortune yet of understanding how plant medicine offers another solution for them that might actually work when all of the normal stuff that they've been through has just been letting them down. So if you're on YouTube, please do hit that subscribe button. If you're on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, write us a review or a rating or whatever. Whatever you can do is going to actually help somebody else find this information. So with all of that said, what I want to do today is I want to talk about 4 of the biggest myths that are out there relating to plant medicine, because we're in a very interesting time right now where we have YouTube documentaries and we have Netflix documentaries about psychedelics, and yet we have very little information to actually guide people on it. So you can watch something like, what is it called, Of Waves and War, or you can listen to a podcast with Rick Doblin and Joe Rogan, and then you're still left wondering, like, is this for me? And if so, where do I even start? So let's dive into it. Myth number 1 is that this shit is just for Navy SEALs and like operators and stuff. And that myth persists because all the documentaries are about Navy SEALs. And all of the funding is for Navy SEALs, and all of the fucking galas and just all of this stuff seems to revolve around like the special operations community. And for one thing, like, veterans healing is a cause like everybody can get behind, right? So that makes sense that stuff is leading the charge. And, you know, the special operations stuff is like sexy and exciting. And we could make a million jokes about Navy SEALs, you know, writing books and having podcasts and all that stuff. I'm sure there's like Delta operators out there who are healing and not fucking talking about it, because that's the whole thing. But the point being, this stuff is not just for those people. This stuff, it's not even just for veterans or cops or whatever. This is for everybody. Like, you don't have to, it's not like like at an amusement park where like you must be this tall to ride this ride, right? Like, you don't have to have X trauma to qualify for healing. We always kind of talk about how this stuff is all relative. Like, trauma is trauma is trauma. The worst thing that ever happened to you is the worst thing that ever happened to you. Whether that was getting blown up by an IED in Afghanistan or not getting hugged enough as a child. Like, you are your own scope for that. So nobody can tell you whether like you're not traumatized enough or anything like that. There's no trauma Olympics. This is not a dick measuring contest. And I think that's actually potentially a good thing about me being a civilian and working with veterans and first responders and stuff. Like, within the veteran world, I think there's a lot of like, oh, I wasn't wounded in combat, so my issues don't qualify. Or, oh, I didn't deploy in combat, so my issues don't qualify, or whatever. Everybody who served in whatever capacity is more badass than I am because I'm a civilian. So I think that alone kind of removes some of that like trauma competition, at least in the span of our program and our retreat. So that's cool. But the point that I'm trying to make to you is like, this stuff is for everybody. You don't have to be a special operator. You don't have to be a cop. You don't have to be anybody to qualify for this stuff. You just have to want to be doing better. That's really the only qualification, is to like take this seriously and want to put in work on yourself. And then this is for you. Myth number 2 is that I have been through so much horrible shit in my life, I'm guaranteed to have a bad trip or a challenging experience at the very least. So I'm going to share a couple stories with you right now. So I was kind of jokingly referenced to like, oh, I got blown up on a hillside in Afghanistan because one of our favorite clients, my favorite person, Toby Miller, got blown up on a hillside in Afghanistan. His dog handler, when they were out on patrol, was a few meters away from him. His dog handler stepped on an IED, lost both legs. Toby was in the blast, got some biological shrapnel, got a TBI, got a lot of fucking issues that came from that. Very long story short, he went through our program to come off of his SNRIs, prepare for an ayahuasca retreat, took him down to the jungle to sit with the medicine. He was, I'm not going to say he was scared, but he went into it expecting it to be a very challenging experience. I remember him saying, like, okay, I feel like on night one, like I got to know this medicine, and now I'm ready to wrestle with the ayahuasca. And I was like, bro, like, who said that you're here to wrestle with it? Like, maybe it'll just be chill. And a lot of other factors went into it. The maestra took special care of him. He went on to have, I'm not going to call it like an easy experience, because he definitely saw a lot of the horrible things that happened to him, but he would not describe that as a bad experience by any means. He certainly did not relive his traumas. He did not like have all of these memories shown to him again. He had, for the most part, a very gentle and a very healing experience. If you want to hear all about that, you can go listen to our podcast episode with this guy. Another dude, this gentleman named Damien, who painted this dope-ass Jaguar that I have. Also, we've got a podcast interview with him. He did relive one of his most traumatic experiences under the medicine. But he was able to see it almost like he was watching a movie. And the takeaway for him was that he'd been looking at it all wrong his whole life. So he was in like the worst train accident in European history, and tons of people died, and he pulled a bunch of people out of this train wreck. And when he was under the medicine, he experienced that again. But instead of experiencing the pain and the death and the fear and the anger that he felt, he watched it with the lens of him being a hero, of pulling people out, and having a new level of compassion and empathy for all those other people there that previously he felt so much anger towards them. Now he was able to feel compassion and love. So it was like, yes, the medicine showed him this thing that happened to him, but it completely removed the fear, anger, guilt, and shame associated with it and replaced those with like only positive emotions. And that kind of thing, like that seems to be what happens a lot. We've had women at our jiu-jitsu retreat, when we do our holotropic breathwork ceremony, re-experience or kind of relive the memories of sexual assault that they had been the victim of. And instead of feeling the normal guilt, shame, fear, and anger associated with those memories, they just felt love and acceptance for themselves. So yes, the medicine might show you some of those things, especially ibogaine seems to do that. It almost like replays this like memory reel in your head, but it's not to re-traumatize you. It's not just to like dredge these things up that have been existing in the shadows that your brain maybe has shoved down for a reason, but rather it brings them up and it removes the fear associated with it. It removes the trauma associated with it. So no matter how like quote fucked up your past was, that shouldn't be something that scares you about psychedelics. That should definitely be a reason that you take the preparation seriously. It should be a reason that you work through as much of it on your own as you can. It should be a reason that you communicate all of this to your facilitators and your guides. And it should be a reason that you build as strong of a relationship with the plant medicine and with yourself as you can before that experience and integrate it afterwards. But it shouldn't be something that turns you off from plant medicine. That is definitely a myth, that somebody might be too fucked up to be able to access these things and to be able to heal. Myth number 3, or how do the Germans do it? 3, as my Austrian wife would do it. Myth number 3 is that somebody just needs a reset, or they just need a breakthrough, or they just need a really powerful experience, and then they'll be good. This is something that we hear so much with someone who has had like one positive experience with mushrooms. Like just met a dude the other day who was like, yeah, like every couple of years I'll do 5 grams of mushrooms and I'll be good for a few months. And then I'll slowly get depressed again until it gets so bad that I'm suicidal. And then I'll do mushrooms again and it resets me for a little while. I'm like, my brother in Christ, this is a sign that something is wrong here. You should not need to get reset and then just like taper off until you're shitty again and then reset and then taper off. You're supposed to take this medicine and then do a bunch of shit after so that you don't just steadily decline again. Imagine if you had a sick goldfish in a dirty fucking tank, and all that you did was you took the goldfish out, you took it to the vet, you gave it a dose of antibiotics, the fish feels great now, and then you go and you put it right back into its dirty ass fish tank. That's essentially what somebody is doing when they go to a retreat. They feel great, they have this honeymoon phase, and then they go right back into their old life, and they go right back into their old ways of being. Nothing is really changing for the long term. So can psychedelics offer you a hard reset, so to speak, in your brain? Yeah, 100%. Ibogaine specifically can interrupt addiction pathways, and just in general, a breakthrough level experience. We know this is kind of how the neuroplasticity works and the downregulation of the default mode network, which I don't want to make this whole talk about neuroscience right now. But that is essentially what a large dose of psychedelics offers you. It is a hard reset. But now the real question is, what are you going to do afterwards? Are we going to continue making the same mistakes and living in the same environment that made you sick, quote unquote, to begin with? Or are we going to capitalize on that reset and actually act differently? And this is why I sound like a broken record talking about how important integration is from the medicine. And finally, myth number 4 is that you need to leave the country in order to experience this, or even just that you need to go to a retreat in general. There are more and more retreats in the United States that people can access, but the idea that I need to take a week away from my work, away from my family, away from my home life, and go someplace else to access this healing, or even on another level, this idea that you have to kind of blow up everything that's out of alignment in your life, like it's going to take some radical shift. Like I need to quit my job and sell all my possessions and cut out all these toxic people and go live in a van while I find myself. Like, sure, you can do that. But I think that there's another option. There's another route that's not as extreme. And I think because of that, it's actually a lot more long lasting. It's a lot more durable, because if you do something like consistent microdosing with a mindfulness practice and with a journaling practice and with intentional small scale shadow work, I say small scale meaning let me take a microdose and sit outside on my porch and leave my phone away from me out of arm's reach, and let me do a few journaling prompts that a coach has given me specifically about all the things that I'm struggling with. That's different than, hey, let me eat 5 grams of mushrooms, or hey, let me fly to Peru for an ayahuasca retreat. It's not as sexy. It's not as exciting, right? That actually sounds horrible. You probably just got like a knot in your stomach when I said, yeah, let me leave my phone downstairs, go outside and sit down with a journal for 30 minutes and write about all of my issues. Like that's awful. Nobody wants to do that. But that's actually the shit that makes a difference. That's actually the shit that works. So I think that healing, it can look, I think it should look a lot more boring than we want it to. And that's kind of hard to, that's a hard pill to swallow. But I think there's a lot of magic in the boring stuff. You don't have to leave the country. You don't have to go to a retreat. You don't have to blow up your life in order to start making progress. And in fact, by doing it slower and more incrementally, I think by nature you're almost guaranteed to have it be more effective, because then we can be confident that the change is coming from within you, and it's not just this like honeymoon phase from the medicine, or it's not just the fact that like, hey, I left my shitty hometown and I went to Costa Rica and that was an exciting adventure, but rather I am truly owning these changes inside of me because I am doing the work on myself. I'm not outsourcing it to the medicine or to the facilitators at some retreat. I'm not just taking drastic steps and blowing up my life, but rather I'm taking responsibility, I'm taking ownership, I'm taking accountability, and I am actually making these changes in order to live differently day in and day out, no matter what is actually going on, because I am choosing to respond in a different way instead of just living knee-jerk reaction to knee-jerk reaction based on all of these trauma responses that I've accumulated over time. So those are the biggest 4 myths or misconceptions, at least that I identified on the top of my mind after talking to lots and lots of people about this work. If you got some other things that are bouncing around in your brain you want some clarity on, go ahead and leave a comment on this video or just send us a message on Instagram. If you got a specific topic that you want to see covered, if you got specific questions, shoot us a message and we'll see if we can cover it, or I'll just write you back and answer it for you. By the way, if you haven't seen it already, in the description of this episode, we'll have a few links for some other resources that you can check out. We've got a video going over the ins and outs of a few different options out there, a few different avenues of plant medicine work. And then we've got one that's a very deep dive on microdosing with psilocybin and our method specifically. So if you're curious about the work that we do, that would be the number one place to start. Or if you have no intention of ever working with me, but you just want to learn about microdosing and maybe take a few elements and use them in your own practice, just hit those links in the description and check it out. Until next time, peace out.